I'm not clear about the report that's being addressed, and since I was not at the other meetings, you may be able to answer this. Why is there no section in this report addressing the environmental issues and the costs related to environmental protection? Has that been addressed, or is that something that I'm unaware of?
Well, on the website there are two reports, one on air quality and one on ground surface water quality. Very extensive reports, but also in our final report we're going to discuss the cost issue.
All right. Thank you. Now I'm getting into more of the financial questions. Please substantively address taxpayer liability in the event of personal injury claims in both small and higher level events and property damage.
In Kathy's presentation, I think that's one of the things we went over, that we're expecting financial assurance to address those specific issues.
How can the Commonwealth and/or mining companies' insurance guarantee reimbursement for direct and indirect property damage from possible emergencies, namely groundwater contamination?
Groundwater is a significant issue, and we have a number of recommendations related to groundwater and some proposals on ways to try to address off-site impacts, both from possible contamination as well as effects from dewatering the mine. So we will have recommendations on those issues.
Okay. So who would be compensating the property owners and citizens of Pennsylvania County for the, well,
it would be the owner-operator of the facility.
Let's see. What happens if Virginia Uranium Incorporated closes in the next so many years? Who is responsible? And actually, the number was put in 100,000 years, which is the half-life of uranium ore tails.
We're required, one of the things that and I think it was addressed in the presentation as well, some of this financial assurance has to be upfront, right from the beginning, so that if anything happens or the site shuts down, we're assured that we've got the money to address it.
Yeah, the owner-operator has to monitor the tailings and certify that they're safe and secure during the operational phase. And then once decommissioning occurs and reclamation, that would turn over to either DOE or the state for the long term. But the intent of the financial assurance mechanisms is to ensure that we have the funding necessary to conduct the monitoring, surveillance, and any improvements that need to be made over time. And that's the point of having those paid up front before the license is terminated, to be able to sustain that long-term process.
Yeah, when the term closed is used, whether they defaulted, in which case there are financial mechanisms to handle that. Under normal circumstances, if they mothball the mine, they're still responsible for all issues involved in the mine, the monitoring, making sure that all the machinery and safety of the mine and the mill is maintained. So they would still be responsible. If that's what you mean by closing, is that they basically mothball the mine or go into temporary cessation. They don't lose any of their responsibilities for their financial obligations.
And the slide spoke to this. In fact, we're very specific about the regulatory authority being listed as the third party on any financial assurance instrument, so that if the licensee were to go bankrupt or cease to exist, the agency would have access to money to ensure decontamination, decommissioning, and long-term surveillance and monitoring.
Right. terms of the socioeconomic study, what is the sample size for each target segment of the socioeconomic study?
Actually, the study is going to conduct between 600 and 1,000 telephone interviews with representative sample of Virginia businesses. And that's according to the plan that we developed with Right and ORI. Target respondents are business owners and managers who represent a mix of small, medium, and large businesses.
Can you repeat that? I couldn't understand what he said.
I'll be glad to repeat that. Between November 13 and November 30, ORI is completing between 600 and 1,000 telephone interviews, depending on the incidents and their ability to reach respondents and their desire to participate in the survey. The respondents targeted will be business owners, managers, and others representing a mix of small, medium, and large size businesses across the Commonwealth. Now, about 20% will focus on South Central Virginia, Pennsylvania County area, and the remaining across the balance of the county.
Can you define small and medium business?
Okay, all right. Sorry, we'll see if we can come up with something later, but I was told that we're not going to allow follow-up questions to make sure that we can get through our list that we have here. So, thank you. One of the questions I had was the lawyers can keep a running line clean from fear of litigation, but what happens when the price of uranium falls, as it did in the 1980s, and the mine becomes lawsuit-proof, just as the guy who hits you in the 20-year-old Chevette? Will insurance and bond companies cover the cost when the localities find it politically impossible not to install the expensive water filtration or systems in place? So, protection, I guess, from a decline in the value of uranium.
You know, I think we've answered that, a few times already. I mean, that's part of the financial assurance mechanisms, and it's supposed to cover even impacts to natural resources and the cost of replacing natural resources, in addition to public water supplies, anything else that's is caused by the operation.
Thank you. I'm just trying to find all the nuanced differences in some of these questions and make sure that we get people's questions answered. A different version of this question is that the NRC does not require a mill operator to have public liability insurance. Is that correct? I'm not sure if there's a difference in that or not.
The NRC requires financial assurance as set forth in the regulations. I can't speak to the specific instruments that are being asked about.
Okay. Why is assurance used and not insurance, which is regulated? Is there a difference in those terms? And admittingly, I do not know.
Financial assurance mechanisms would be heavily regulated.
So, okay. And will the funds that are collected and held for monitoring and other safety concerns be dedicated to a lockbox that cannot be used or raided by the General Assembly? Sorry.
I can't speak for the General Assembly.
However, we, the UWG, did anticipate that and have in our recommendations included some that address special funding and restricting access to this funds.
Okay, a lot of these questions, I will admit, still deal with the falling value of uranium. A lot of them have to ask about being able to save funding for making sure that after the mine closed, that there is an endowment that is saved for making sure that everything's being monitored and that people are being taken care of. One question I have here that is different from those previous statements is, if Virginia becomes an agreement state, how many people will be needed to monitor the radiation issue?
That appears to be a specific resource question for VDH's environmental monitoring staff. And we have anticipated that we would need approximately 8 additional in the Division of Radiological Health to conduct environmental monitoring, sampling, and analyses, to reinstitute a radon program, to provide assistance. There would definitely be a compliance and enforcement aspect, so specific dedicated inspectors would be required. So that's a figure that we have estimated and would likely be refined if this initiative progresses.
Didn't you just say you had enough staff earlier? There were questions about staff.
There was a question about enough staff to write regulations.
That was to write
Yes.
regulations.
Yes, and we do have staff to
And
write
this
regulations.
is to enforce.
This is one to enforce, so that was the difference in that.
Yes.
So thank you.
Yes, this is compliance and enforcement, and we would need additional.
What I want to do is I've just gone through and held on to a handful of ones that we've answered about sort of the act of God or natural disasters. So we know that monitoring is in place for that, and that we would try to take insurances, all the considerations for some of that. The one that did pop up that was a little different from that again was monitoring the site after decommissioning. We put up the number 900,000. Does that really cover the cost of monitoring and perpetuating? Yes.
Yes, it's $900,000, give or take, in today's dollars, and would accrue at a minimum of a 1% interest rate. And ideally, it would cover the cost of long-term surveillance and monitoring. In fact, there is a DOE report out that discusses some of the monitoring costs for other decommissioned reclaimed facilities. That gives information in the, it's actually tens of thousands for routine surveillance per year, so not a staggering number, and one that would be covered by that figure. That said, the commission, or the regulating authority, would periodically, and I think right now it's at least once a year, review the set-aside funding and costs, and reserve the right to adjust those as needed based on the operations of the facility. So that is subject to change.
Okay, and the last one I had under the fiscal assurances was something similar to what we had earlier about the decrease in uranium, but just what happens, is there enough assurance for a bankruptcy for the company? Because you're just looking at different companies and situations that have been brought up, some specific examples, including some Superfund sites where companies did go under. Do the assurances cover the bankruptcy, basically?
I mean, that's the requirement, that it be enough to, as Dave was just saying, any type of circumstance where they might go into bankruptcy and shut the facility down.
The next category of questions is on the report itself. Can this study include information on alternative economic developments?
The socioeconomic study is looking at that issue generally as to whether it would have any effect on other types of economic development, but we're not looking at alternative economic development.
Okay.